for the minimum amount of iodine needed to prevent goiter in the vast majority of people. It was never set up for the optimal amount of iodine for the optimal health of people. Now, back then, and as you mentioned, there's some agents in our environment that compete with iodine. So back then, we didn't have too many exposures to those things like we do now. So the agents I'm assuming you were referring to, are the halides. Mm-hmm. So if we recall from high school chemistry, or if you had chemistry in college, the periodic table, on the right side of the periodic table is group 17, the halides. And the halides are in order of their size, from small to largest size. And the halides are a group of elements that are similar size, similar shape, and they can competitively inhibit one another in the human body. So there are four major halides: fluoride, chloride, bromide, and iodine, in order. So what's happened over 100 years since the RDA for iodine was put into play was that, number one, our iodine levels have fallen 50% across the U.S. And number two, our exposure to these toxic halides, of those four halides, two are toxic, not essential for our body, and two are essential. We can't live without them. The two toxic halides are bromide and fluoride. Now, we can argue fluoride and cavities. The rest of the world has seen the fluoride doesn't help much with cavities. There's no difference, fluoridated, non-fluoridated water and cavities. Only the U.S. and parts of New Zealand see otherwise. Every other Western country has stopped adding fluoride to their water supply,
right?
For the most part. But so fluoride and bromide are these toxic halogens that can compete with the essential item, iodine, and particularly bromide. On that scale, it's fluoride, chloride, bromide, iodine. Bromide and iodine are next to each other because they're similar weight and similar size. And if you want to pick one halide, one toxic halide that is going to cause the most havoc with iodine, it's going to be bromide, just from its size and its shape and where it's found on the periodic table. And our exposure to bromide has gone through the roof over the last 50, 60 years. And bromide's in food and drink. It's in consumer goods. It's in carpet. It's in curtains. It's in mattresses. It's a fire retardant in consumer goods. It's in these things. It's in, we can't get away from it. And in my testing with Dr. Abraham, it was the bromide iodine interaction that we found is the most significant. We couldn't really demonstrate fluoride competitively inhibiting an iodine. And I think that's because fluoride is such a small molecule size-wise. It's so electronegative, so toxic to the human body, that when we get fluoride in our body, the human body, the lights are flashing and the police are called. They don't like that floating around because that damages so many enzymes in the body. It binds it away tightly into primarily the bones and the teeth. And so it's not such a, I don't think it's as big as competitive inhibitor as bromide is. That's been my experience with it. I did a study, before you say one thing, I did a study, which I described in my iodine book, where I compared 9 breast cancer women. I just picked the first 9 that came in versus 9 women without breast cancer. That was the only thing I separated them from. We did 24-hour urine tests, and we measured iodine from day 0, day 1, and day 30 days. And we measured bromide and fluoride out of that 24-hour urine. What we found was the breast cancer patients, before any therapy, before iodine therapy was given to them, they had 50% lower iodine, 50% higher bromide. And then as we gave them iodine, their bromide levels shot through the roof coming out of the urine because we competitively inhibited it out of the body. They would detox them from it. And their iodine levels gradually came up. And so we couldn't demonstrate that happening with fluoride.
Interesting. Well, both fluoride and bromide are everywhere. I mean, you've got the fluoride, and I just did a podcast on the forever chemicals in all of our products that we're putting on our skin and thinking that it's fine. And I love when women put perfume straight on their thyroid, right? I mean, you're literally poisoning your thyroid. There are a couple things I really want you to explain deeper, the competitive inhibition, because I talk a lot about this, but not everybody is chemistry minded. And the way I describe it is if if the iodine isn't there, then you've got these little receptor sites that are open, and all of these other halogens are just going to fit right in there nice and perfectly. And if iodine is there, then those things don't have a place to take hold in the body. Would that be correct?
I think you got a good description going. Um, the you know, one way to look at it is that we have these iodine receptors in our thyroid for a reason. We need to make thyroid hormone. Look, you can't make a hormone in the body without iodine. You can't make adrenal hormone, sex hormone, testicular hormone, any of the other hormones. You need iodine. So in the thyroid, it's very apparent because T4, or the inactive form of thyroid hormone that is most predominant in the bloodstream, has 4 atoms of iodine attached to thyroglobulin. T3, the active form, has 3 iodine atoms attached to it. Are you going to make thyroid hormone if you don't have these iodine atoms? Now, what's been shown, so for competitive inhibition, what that means is if you're in a low iodine environment, which our entire country is right now, and you're exposed to bromide, those iodine receptors can become brominated. So instead of iodine binding to thyroglobulin and T4, you might have T4 as 4 atoms of bromine. The laboratory testing doesn't differentiate whether those 4 atoms are iodine or bromide. They've done the studies with animals where if they really make them iodine deficient and they give them enough bromide, they'll brominate their thyroid hormone. And we don't really know what the benefit of that is.
So I want to stop you for a second and really emphasize this, you guys. Your lab test could be representing bromide and not iodine in that T4. Is that correct?
That is correct. So they've done that study in animals. They did it in rats. And we don't know what the consequence of that is. We don't know if there's benefits. I doubt there's benefits, since bromide's a non-essential item and shouldn't be there. And there's iodine receptors here, that's what we were designed. It's our blueprint. But we haven't done the human studies with it. But when you look at the population-wide data of the U.S. and see these iodine levels declining, over 50%, and see our bromide exposure going up at the same time, you can probably hypothesize that that's been happening. And I think that's occurring at all the glandular tissues.